We've all heard the story, right? A genius, a bathtub, and that famous shout of Eureka. But the man behind that moment, Archimedes, was so much more than just a legend. He was the mind who built a bridge between the world of pure ideas and the physical reality we all live in, and in doing so, he changed everything.
Everybody knows the cry, Eureka! It's that classic story of a flash of genius in a bathtub. But here's the thing you have to understand. That moment wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. It was the spark that lit the fuse for a total revolution in how we, as humans, figure things out.
And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Archimedes wasn't some quiet thinker locked away in a room with a bunch of scrolls. No, he was a force of nature. An intellect so powerful that the greatest military machine in the ancient world was stopped dead in its tracks, absolutely terrified, not of an army, but of one man's mind.
To really get what made Archimedes so revolutionary, you've got to understand the world he was born into. It was a world with this giant, invisible wall running right down the middle of how everyone thought.
See, on one side of that wall, you had Greek mathematics. This was the world of pure ideas, perfect forms. It was seen as almost divine. And on the other side, well, that was the physical world we live in. Messy, imperfect, and frankly, kind of dirty. It was considered beneath a true philosopher to mix the purity of math with the practical messiness of reality. And it's that wall that Archimedes was about to completely smash to pieces.
So where did this guy even come from? Well, his story starts in one of the great crossroads of the ancient world and takes him right to its intellectual heart.
He grew up in Syracuse, which is on the island of Sicily, a really thriving Greek city. His dad, Phidias, was an astronomer, and he was the one who first got Archimedes looking up at the stars and seeing not myths, but a giant system that ran on numbers and predictable rules.
So, of course, as a brilliant young man, you did what any genius of the time would do. You went to Alexandria. This was the home of the great library, the center of all knowledge. And there, he completely mastered classical geometry. But he started to see something his teachers didn't. He saw that all this perfect abstract math wasn't just for thinking about. It was a tool, a powerful one.
And when he got back to Syracuse, he got the perfect chance to prove it. Which brings us right back to that famous bath. But let's look at this not as just a funny little story, but as the actual birth of a whole new way of thinking.
Okay, look at what he did here. This whole process literally lays out the scientific method before anyone even had a name for it. You start with a problem, the king thinks he's been cheated, then comes the insight, the Eureka moment in the bath. You can measure volume by displacing water. Then he designs a controlled experiment, comparing the crown to a chunk of pure gold. And finally, based on hard evidence, he reaches a conclusion you can't argue with. The jeweler was a fraud. This was a revolution. Justice was served not by a sword, but by physics.
So here's the key takeaway. Out of this one practical problem, this one piece of jewelry, came a universal law of nature. This principle is the reason a 1,000-ton steel ship floats, but a tiny pebble sinks to the bottom. He uncovered a fundamental rule of the universe, all because a king was worried about his crown.
And once Archimedes proved that you could understand the laws of physics, he started using them to bend the physical world to his will, to do things that, to most people, probably looked like straight-up magic.
This might be his most famous quote. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just him being arrogant. This was a statement of his absolute, unshakable confidence in the power of mathematics. He was basically saying that the laws of leverage are so powerful, so absolute, that the only thing stopping him from moving the planet was finding a long enough lever and a place to stand. The principle itself was that strong.
And he didn't just talk the talk. The city built this monster of a ship, the Syracuse. Think of it as an ancient luxury cruise liner. It was so heavy they couldn't get it into the water. The whole workforce of the city couldn't move it an inch. So Archimedes just designed a system of compound pulleys, sat down, and, as the story goes, single-handedly pulled this massive ship right into the harbor. He turned a math formula into a force greater than an army of men.
And that force was soon turned to war. When Rome came to lay siege to Syracuse, Archimedes basically became its one-man Department of Defense. He built these catapults that could hit targets with terrifying, calculated precision. He designed the claw,
this enormous crane that would just reach out over the city walls, grab Roman ships right out of the water, and smash them against the rocks. And there's even the legend of the burning mirrors that focus sunlight to set their sails on fire. For 2 years, the Roman legions were held off, completely demoralized by war machines that came from the mind of one 75-year-old man. But here's the most incredible part of this entire story. All of those world-changing inventions, the weapons, the levers, the whole shebang, to him, they were just a sideshow. His real work, his true passion, was something else entirely. Yeah, you heard that right. To Archimedes, all of his legendary engineering feats were just hobbies. He literally called them mere amusements, like they were just fun little games you could play with geometry. He saw them as pretty trivial applications of a much greater, much more beautiful calling. Because his true passion, his life's obsession, was pure mathematics. The world of perfect circles, elegant proofs, and the deep hidden connections between numbers and shapes. That is where he found real beauty and joy. And it was in this abstract world that he did some of his most mind-blowing work. I mean, he calculated the value of pi to an accuracy that was just unheard of. And get this, he did it by imagining a circle being squeezed between 2 polygons with up to 96 sides. The amount of pure brain power that would take with no computers is just staggering.
But this was his masterpiece, the discovery he was most proud of. He proved that the relationship between a sphere and the cylinder that fits perfectly around it is this beautifully simple ratio, 2/3. To him, this wasn't just some formula. It was like getting a peek into the elegant cosmic order of the universe. He was so proud of this that he asked for it to be carved on his tombstone.
And that tombstone, well, it brings us to the final, tragic chapter of his life. It's a story that perfectly captures the clash between brute force and the quiet power of a single, focused mind. So after a 2-year siege, the Romans finally broke through the walls of Syracuse. Their commander, Marcellus, the same guy who had been totally humiliated by Archimedes' genius, held him in such high regard that he gave a very specific order to his men: find the old man and do not harm him. But a Roman soldier bursting into a courtyard finds an old man completely absorbed, just drawing geometric shapes in the sand. When the soldier tells him to move, Archimedes, totally lost in his world of pure thought, just waves him away and says what would become his last words: "Do not disturb my circles." The soldier, having no idea who he was, or maybe just not caring, killed him right there on the spot. The soldier ended the man, but he couldn't end the ideas. Archimedes' works survived, and they went on to inspire generations of thinkers. His methods for figuring out areas and volumes were basically integral calculus, 2,000 years before Newton and Leibniz got credit for it. He laid the very foundation that giants like Galileo would use to build our modern world. Which really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The Roman Empire, with all its power and all its legions, is gone. It's history. The soldier and his sword are long forgotten. But the circles of Archimedes? They are eternal. They live on in every textbook, in every single equation, and in every piece of technology that shapes the world we live in today.